is the orc sculpt. I kind of wanted to leave it uncovered, and also I kind of just got in because of traffic, so I'm like Mr. Rogers. You might see me changing. But anyway, we're about to mold an orc. I'm going to mold it in Hydrocal. If you want to ask questions, then go on to Haunter's Hangout and ask the questions there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Christy, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. All right, I have, you guys can't see here, I have Hydrocal plaster. This is a 100-pound bag. It costs about $35. It is the best thing if you're not going to bake a mold. I'm going to get to that part of it. I have to get everything prepped first, and I want you guys to see that process. Here is the finished orc sculpt. I'm going to take you guys down to show you guys where it went to after you saw it last. Few more fine wrinkles, few more details. I made sure that the the eyes are, I'll know exactly where to cut those. Okay, so that's the orc sculpt that we're going to mold. We're going to mold with these teeth in. These teeth are pumpkin teeth. I buy them from the original pumpkin teeth on Etsy. So normally I buy them at trade shows, but that's where he sells most of the time. All right, so I'm going to mold it on this nice flat table. I don't want to mold it here on this 45-degree angle, and this piece of wood here would be a funky lip kind of thing on the mold. So once you can make sure that your sculpt can be free, now I'll get this out of the way. Everything when you are making masks or doing latex work or mold work, water-based clay turns into dust. Plaster in the bag, it's all dust. So cleaning up after your work is really a huge part of the process, because everything that we do just gets to be dirty and dirty. All right, so now over here on the sculpt, I have it off, I have it sitting on the table. You can see that there's the original piece right here. This is kind of funky shaped. I'm going to clean this up really quick so this is nice and smooth clay all the way around, because I don't want the plaster to touch the resin of the bust if I can help it. So stage one is clean that up. All right. And I just have a little tool here. I'm going to chop off some of this clay that I had to use this clay to brace it up against the wood. So now that it's not against that piece of wood, I don't need that clay. All right, so I don't know how many folks we're going to have tonight. It is a Monday night.
Boy, was it a Monday. Oh, man.
It was a Monday, that's for sure. So I'm just getting into my clay here that I sculpted from. Now, the only reason that I'm doing this tonight is because frickin' Al Driver brought it up when I was sculpting, that he kind of wanted to see the whole process. So that's why this is happening.
I brought it up because someone else asked for it.
Yeah, are you going to blame somebody else, Al?
Yes.
Okay. I have a lot of molding videos on my Sculpting's channel on YouTube, quite a bit. I have a lot of them. So this information is out there. This information is even out there by me. So, but this particular mask, which honestly is a pretty easy mask to mold. It's not a hard mask to mold at all. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up just a little bit more. And it might seem like it takes a while to get to the molding, but the prep work is half of it. I mean, the prep work is huge. It makes molding easy. You want to have everything ready to go. Have all your material laid out. The first thing I did as soon as I got started was I got a bucket of water. And I have another bucket of water, the white bucket right behind my back. That's just me to wash my hands in, because you can't get plaster in your sink. It'll clog up your drain. It's powder, when mixed with water, turns into a rock. So don't wash it down the drain in any form. So you have to kind of be careful of that.
Now, do you prefer hydrocal or ultracal to this process?
Honestly, it doesn't really matter. There's a couple differences. Ultracal likes to be built up in layers, and hydrocal would prefer it if you did it all at once.
Okay. Which one would you say is better for multiple pulls?
Hydrocal hydrocal maybe is a little bit softer, but they're neck and neck on that. There's no huge difference either way. They're both going to be good for a lot of pulls, so I wouldn't worry about that. That's my computer cord to make sure I don't die here. All right, yes, and then I have to plug in this time. So now I'm going to clear some space because I want the mold to come about 3 or 4 inches around this. And this is how I clean tables. I just push stuff to other parts of the table because I'm a terrible person.
You're going to put it right on the table?
I'm going to mold right on this table, absolutely. Now I have a protective mat down, like it's just foam that I put down on top of my table. So that's already there. I'm not worried about this tabletop. You know, this is what this table is for. And I'm just looking around the edges. Now that I cleaned up that base, I'll show you, because I showed you before I cleaned it up. See how now that's going to be nice and smooth? When I do that mold, it's going to go nice straight down to here, and I'll be able to get nice clean pulls out of it.
Yeah.
You have to think in negative. Everything that's air right now is going to be rock. So thinking in the negative helps. What I have to do now is I want to release the area around the mask with Vaseline, and I'm going to release his eyes. Because the eyes, I don't have any clay there, that's pure resin. I like eyes that, in a mask, that the actor can see out of. If it's their own eyes, that frees them up to wear contacts, but it also makes sure they have good vision. I make masks for haunted houses, so I want actors to be able to see. That's very important to me. They have to be able to see and breathe. A lot of sculptors don't think about that, and because they're making art, they're making a sculpt that will turn into a mask. I'm making a sculpt in order to make a mask. Sculpt is a tool for an actor, you know. All right, I'm going to grab my Vaseline from right over here. I'm going to hit this table. And I want a nice flat bottom on my mold. I don't want it to be all hinky-jinky because, you know, that'll help you in draining. That'll help you for a lot of things. I'm going to build up a dome of plaster around this that is probably 2-3 inches thick most of the way around. This is going to be a fairly heavy mold for such a small mask, but it's going to be durable. I'm also going to build it up. It's got a flat bottom. It'll be flat up here so I can flip it over and fill it with latex easy. Again, questions are going to be on the Haunters Hangout page. And we have a link there. Is that right, Christy?
Yes.
So that people can join. But also, that thread is where you can ask questions.
Yeah, unfortunately, YouTube is disabled.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing wrong where we can't comment on YouTube right away. I might have to ask one of the hangout people who know those things.
Michael Lacey says, looks like there's a penny on the floor.
Oh, good Lord. Who knows what's on my floor?
And always feel better about my shop when I see yours. FYI, yours is clean compared to mine, and I'm small time.
And you know what? It's not how clean your shop is. It's how much work comes out of it. That's what matters. I don't really keep up that clean of a shop. It's fairly organized. I can find what I need, but I'm not a constant sweeper. Now, I clean more than I want already. But, all right, I have released everything that I have to release. Come with me. All right. I put Vaseline on those eyes because those are straight resin. And there's Vaseline. You can probably see the difference in shine. There's Vaseline all the way around this sculpt. I'm now going to grab some spray sealer so I can seal the clay in. And then I'll be able to start the molding process. Although this really is all part of the molding process. Be right back. Just have to grab some crystal clear.
What's crystal clear?
Crystal clear is a Krylon product, and it is basically a spray plastic. I'm going to spray it over this, probably 2 coats, and that's going to help me make a barrier between the clay and the plaster so that it'll clean a little bit easier out of the mold. You can use different spray paints, but I think this actually works best.
Gotcha.
And this one may not have a rattle inside. I'm going to give it a good college try. Yeah, I was actually up till about 3 o'clock in the morning last night working on Krampus masks.
Oh, wow.
So I might spin those around later because there's going to be a lot of us waiting for plaster to dry or whatever. So I'll have stuff to talk about then. All right, just going to give this a light coat all the way around. And crystal clear does make a big difference when it comes to releasing your mask. I never thought it did much, and sometimes I skip this step. I might mold right onto the clay, but I don't want to teach you guys to do that. I want to show you guys all the steps. All right, I have here, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So I have right here, this is my bucket. It's about 3/4 full of water, and all it's here for is me to wash my hands afterwards. Whenever I'm working with plaster, it dries your hands out so much, I almost always wear gloves. You know, if I'm having a day where I'm making 10 mask molds in a day, if I'm not wearing gloves, that 10th mold, I might see pink plaster, and that's because the plaster has dried out my hands so much that they crack.
Always fun.
Yes. So just wear gloves. All right, hydrocal is very white. If I were going to dump this bag into a container like I normally do, you want a dust mask or a respirator because this is powder that when it gets wet, it turns into water. If it's in the air, it turns into stone. If it's in the air as powder, because you pour it into a container, it made a big cloud, and you breathe it in, it turns into stone in your lungs.
Eee.
Right, so wear a dust mask. I'm going to grab a dipping cup for this bag, and I'll be right back. I have a bunch of awesome friends who save these for me because these are just so useful for all kinds of stuff. All right, my first layer is dry on the crystal clear. I'm going to paint another layer.
Now, before you used to use spray, just any color spray paint.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's also a spray plastic, just has some color in it. I think this sticks a little bit. If I have this on hand, I'll always use this. If I don't have it on hand, I'll use spray paint.
Gotcha.
This is the correct stuff to use. Spray paint is what you can use. This is where I get a little nervous about my computer because this is pretty close to the molding process.
Can you put a plastic bag somewhat around? Probably not.
Nah, it'll be okay. It'll be fine. Sure. All right, I have, this is at the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket that I just cut off, and I have warm water in here. It's not hot water, it's warm water. The hotter your water, the faster your plaster is going to kick. So you can use colder water to cool it down. That's easier with UltraCal than HydroCal. Sometimes with HydroCal, if you use too cold of water, you'll get little hairline cracks in it. It won't damage your mold, but it'll make a little bit more cleanup because you'll have a little ridge of latex where that crack was. So use water a little bit warmer than, a little warmer than room temperature, maybe 80-degree water. All right, so I just sprayed that guy. Pretty close. Also, in a 5-gallon bucket, for my first layer, I want 2 fingers of water. So by that, I mean the width of my 2 fingers. If this were the 5-gallon bucket, from the bottom, 2 fingers up. That's a good first batch for me that I know I can get it all done in the time that I have for it to kick. If I mix too much material, then it's going to turn into stone in the mixing bowl, and I'm not going to be able to make a mold out of it, so it's wasted money. So mix a smaller batch, and then get up to the size batches that you can make sure you can use. HydroCal does like to be mixed all in one whack, but you can get away with that with doing it in batches if you're fast. Don't do 1 layer, go to lunch, come back 2 hours later. Don't do that. Okay, so let me dump some of this water out because I have about 3 fingers of water in there now. I'm going to dump some out so I have the right amount of water.
Oh. Michael Lacey says, my wife works in the medical trade. They have pre-cut sheets that are tacky to cover keyboards.
You know what? I have heard about those. I'm just not smart enough to get one. Okay.
Word says, call me Dr. Dark.
Okay. All right. So here's my water. I'm looking at my sculpt. This is the last chance I'm going to get. I'm about to mix stone and put it on here. anything that's wrong with this sculpt, it's going to bug me for the rest of my life because I didn't fix it before I molded it. Take a second to look your sculpt over. If it's not symmetrical, fix it. It's just mud. You haven't invested too much time yet. Just fix it. It's going to bug you forever. Take the time, make it a good sculpt. I see one little spot that I'm going to fix on the nose. I didn't like the texture, so I took a thing and made some different texture. Now I'm pretty happy. Generally, I'm a pretty happy guy. All right. Mixing the plaster. I'm going to shake it into the bowl. I don't want to put it all in one spot, so I'm going to move the bowl around. Going through a sifter would be awesome. A lot of people recommend that. Don't just dump it in the middle. I'm going to move it around as I dump it. Shake it from side to side. Spin my bowl every now and then.
If you dump it in the middle, what happens?
You have to do a lot more mixing. This way, every little bit that goes in is individual and it gets saturated. And that's nice. Just like if you're baking, you know, you put too much flour in at once, and you have a mound of flour that, you know, doesn't get mixed, doesn't get cooked. Same thing can happen. You'll notice I have a much bigger bowl than I had water. I'm adding stuff to water. So what will happen is this is going to rise quite a bit. It is far too easy for you to make too much plaster for the bowl you're mixing in. That is something worth being cautious about. I want to have room to mix.
Now, one thing I remember you saying is that the plaster has a tendency to make the container brittle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, it pulls moisture out of your hands. It's pulling moisture out of this plastic. So over time, this is going to, you know, if I use this for, you know, 15 molds or so, or 15, 20 batches of plaster, it's much more likely to crack or break and it gets brittle. Just like strong UV rays will do that to plastic. Can you guys see in here at all?
Yes.
Okay, do you see the little islands forming now?
I see a
Yeah, they're not sinking right away. See that? It's like a little continent of plaster. That's because it's built up under there. And that tells me I'm getting close because I have this plaster right here.
Yep.
What I'm looking for is for it to look like a dry, cracked riverbed. That's what I want. I want to look at the surface of the moon. Okay. Mixing plaster is not sexy. It's not terribly interesting. It is a means to an end, and you should do it right and take the right amount of time on it.
How many
Right now, everywhere I'm seeing water standing, I'm putting a little bit of plaster on it.
Now, how many mixes would you say that bucket's going to give you before it has the possibility of cracking?
20, maybe 25. All right, let me pull down here with the camera. See that cracked surface? That is dry riverbed, surface of the moon. I'm taking what's dry, I'm spreading it to where there's just water. that water will soak through that, and it'll give me exactly the surface that I want. I'm ready to mix this up now. When I'm doing big batches, I like to mix with a drill and a paddle bit. That makes sure I'm not going to get any lumps in it. Small batch, the couple batches that I need for this mask, I'm just going to mix by hand. And by mix, what I really mean is run my hand through it, look for lumps, and squeeze them out. If anything is more solid than the rest of it, I want to squeeze it, break it up, so that this is just one nice flowy substance. Any lump that you guys see in here, that's what I'm trying to seek out and destroy. It's like the lumps are barrels and you are Donkey Kong. You have to find them and crush them.
Used to play that a lot when I was younger.
Yeah, I'm old too. All right, I think just about all of my lumps are out.
Back here.
I'm going to get as much as I can off of my hand. Now I'm tapping the bowl. I'm tapping the bowl because there's air bubbles in there, and those air bubbles, if I vibrate the surface, are free to rise up and come to the top. When they rise up and come to the top, I'm able to pop them. And that's just water.
Oh, so you pop them with water?
Yeah, I just give them a little spray. You can use alcohol, you can use water, but I don't want to put those bubbles on my mask because air bubbles are your enemy.
Mm.
1-inch chip brush. I go through a lot of these things. The first thing I'm going to do is get my nose cavity. And I am really poking into that nose. Now you'll see me not slow down as much, and I might do less talking because now I'm on a timetable. My plaster is mixed. It's going to kick in 20 minutes or so, whether I am ready or not. So my goal is to be ready.
Now, how much would
because I sculpt.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask, because Michael Lassiter wants to know, how much do you consider a big batch?
Like I said, that 2 fingers of plaster is about the biggest batch that I do because of the kinds of molds that I make. And now I might do, I might do one of them, dump it on here, go right away and mix another batch. But I'd rather only mix up 2 fingers worth in a 5-gallon bucket at a time. And as I'm sculpted in water-based clay. That's a pretty soft medium. If I really stab it on there, or if I wipe too hard, I'm re-wetting water-based clay. If I do that, then I stand a chance of altering my sculpt. But it's also a lot more effective for me to just load my brush and dab it on so that it comes off of the brush. That is the most effective way to get it on there. It'll keep it from fish-eyeing. Fish-eyeing is when it goes on and the surface repels it.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that just happens. It's because we put a sealer on there, and it's trying to do its job and keep the moisture out.
Now,
I like to go for my recesses and my detail first, so I'm making sure I get all the corner of my eyes. I'm getting the corner of the nose. I'm getting in the nostrils. I have done a good bit in the mouth with the teeth. All my hard wrinkles, I'm going to run down them. Right now, I'm moving to the ears.
now Dr. Dark asks, should you remove the teeth?
No, well, you can. Well, I don't really like to work that hard. So if I can mold it with the teeth in, and I can, then what I can do is I'll have a latex, it'll have latex teeth. If I take the teeth out and mold it, I have to glue teeth in every single time. So I don't want to take that time, and also that's another fail point in the mask. That's something for an actor to rip out because they weren't paying attention. So I don't like to give those opportunities. And the glory of a half mask mold, I don't have to do any pry points. I don't have to do any keys so both halves lock together. It's a half mask. I'm just going to make a cool shaped plaster bowl and fill it with latex.
That's a good point.
And it covers enough of the head, and it's also a little more comfortable than a full mask.
What's your favorite to make, full or half?
Oh, half, because they're so much easier as far as molding goes. You know, this is a real easy mold to make. It's a one-piece mold. This is going to be done. I'll have this mold done. I'll be cleaning it out at 9 o'clock. I think that's the time frame we're on. What time is it now? 7:40.
7:43.
Yeah. Yeah, because this layer is going to dry. I'm going to do a slightly thicker layer. You know, I'll probably do 3 or 4 of these layers on this mask, and then I can flip it over and start cleaning it. So now what I'm doing is I'm making sure that there is plaster under the ears. I want under these ears to have plaster. That's a chance for an undercut. It's a chance for an air pocket. You know how if you take a glass and you put it upside down into a sink full of water, it'll trap air?
Oh, yeah.
Well, all these little cubbies can trap air. And I don't want to trap air on my mold because that's an area where latex won't go. Because, you know, there's not a mold there.
Now,
And as I work with this batch, it's going to get a little bit thicker and a little bit thicker. The way for me to build up multiple layers is by that dabbing. It's going to go on top. I'm not wiping away what's there, so I'm just shaking off my brush, really, to build up that second layer.
couple good questions been asked. Dr. Dark asks, I don't see stubs on the top of the head. How will you add horns?
This is an orc. He won't have horns. If he does have horns, what I will do is I will just glue them on. I'll make sure they're flat bottomed.
Gotcha.
And match the shape of the head. His primary use won't be for horns.
And J-Wall says, tons of info.
I suppose. No one has proven that I know what I'm doing, so this could all be wrong. I've only made about 300 of these.
Well, nobody's blown themselves up, so I guess you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And then
But
Mike... Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a hard time claiming I'm an expert on anything. I just like to make stuff.
That's always good. And then Michael Lacey says, when the mask is done, do you add any foam inside it to help fit the face better, or is it not necessary?
Normally it's not necessary. This is a latex mask. It'll be a soft material. It's going to form fairly well to the face. I'm making this pretty darn head-sized. It's not going to be huge. If it were a really big mask, you get into an issue with latex with shrinkage, because latex will shrink 15 to 20%. So you kind of have to guess, how much will this shrink? What size should I make it? And then your head form has to be the right size. There's a lot of factors involved in order to get it sized right. So what production companies do, because they don't want it to be too tight, someone won't buy it, they make a big one and put foam in it. That's kind of like, if you have a super quality belt, it has one hole. It's made for you, and it's going to fit you tight enough to keep your pants up. You know, a real fancy belt has one hole, maybe two, for like Thanksgiving and stuff. But so you want a mask, a really good mask is going to fit you. If they want to sell their belt to thousands of people, well, they put a lot of holes in it, so you have a lot of options. If you want a mask to fit thousands of people, make it huge, and then you can add or take away foam. Nothing wrong with that, but I just want to make one that's, you know, a little closer. If somebody says, hey, your mask is too small, I'll just make another one that's bigger.
Alan, a
This
few comments
Yeah?
back, somebody referenced the teeth again, that you didn't remove them.
I did not remove them, and I don't have to remove them. I will make sure I go far enough into this video where I show you guys me pulling the teeth out of this mold. All right? That shouldn't be too hard. Should be pretty easy for you to do that.
Well, if I remember from the last video, because they're resin and you've also sprayed them with a little bit of the latex paint, they should come out relatively easy.
Well, they're tapered. They're also perfectly tapered. So they don't have a big knob on the end that would get stuck in the plaster.
Good point.
It's just a long point that'll pull right out with a bit of a tug. There's a little bit of suction holding it in, but that's going to be it.
I don't know if I'm asking this correctly for Michael Lacey. He says, so do you start with a smaller head form to take in spacing the clay adds?
No, because your latex is going to shrink. I always take a head form that is head sized. I add about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of clay, and then I sculpt. That way I can pare down in some spots. That way I can build up in some spots, like your cheekbones. You know, so I always, and then shrinkage is going to take it right back down to head size, where it's going to fit an actor, you know, pretty darn nice.
Gotcha. And Michael Lassiter says, big teeth are tough to get out at times.
Well, if I sculpted big teeth out of clay, he's absolutely right. Because I'd pull the root out and there'd be clay left in there. But even the huge pumpkin teeth, they come right out because it's one piece of plastic. It's just going to tug right out. Whereas, you know, clay, it's going to break off into little pieces, and it might not hold itself together well enough. It is slightly limiting in design, but man, I love me some pumpkin teeth. They make life easy. If you guys are Facebook friends with me, you might have seen the monster ham or the monster turkey that I just decorated to the horror of my wife. Well, those are all, you know, pumpkin teeth.
He sells on Hot Swap too.
He gets around. He sells on Etsy, I know for sure. He's at almost all the trade shows. His name is Bob. I forget his last name right now. But if you buy pumpkin teeth on Etsy, you're buying from the same guy I buy from.
Does he sell in spirit?
I don't know. Because he had a company, and he had him and a partner, and they ended up splitting up. So 2 people kind of sell them. I buy from Bob. I like Bob.
Gotcha.
Bob has never given me a reason not to buy from Bob. But with any business, it's good to know there are options.
Oh, yeah.
So you guys might be able to see this plaster is a little bit thicker. It's not running down the same way it was before. It's kind of shelving a little bit. And I'm really using that right now. I'm not ever stopping. I'm just loading up my brush, and I'm shaking it out. And I'm trying to fill these eye sockets. I'm trying to fill up the area on the side of the nose so I'm as smooth as possible. I'm filling in the ears. Right now I'm trying to take away all the detail and definition. Trying to make it like a blank canvas so that I can put on thicker and thicker layers in a smooth, easy fashion. And again, I'm very aware that my time is just ticking away. Time is just ticking away.
I just found Bob's Facebook page, so I posted the link in the Honors Hangout page.
Hey, awesome, very good. And what I'll do is I'll post that when I can edit the video. So when this goes live to YouTube for comments and everything, I'll put a link to his Etsy store in my description.
And I found how to enable the comments, so the next time you have a video, you should be able to allow comments on the video.
Good. Help dumb Alan do tech stuff. That is very helpful.
You're not dumb. It's your knowledge is better used elsewhere.
Yes, like for moving heavy stuff.
Or making masks.
Okay, that too. All right, and now I'm really, because my plaster's thick enough, now I'm really putting it right by the ear and kind of shoveling it in there to make sure inside under the ear is full of plaster. I want a cave where air can hide out. I want to make sure it's full of plaster.
Now, at what point do you feel like you can't work with that plaster anymore and you feel a need to either stop where you're at or make another batch?
Oh, you'll see. It happens. Once it doesn't flow, this kind of becomes a non-Newtonian fluid after a while. And what that means is it'll forget it's a liquid. As long as I can remind it that it's a liquid and make it flow, then I'm able to use it. But there's a certain point where you just have to call it dead in the bucket, and at that point, that's when you really can't build it up anymore. Call it dead, because you can do detriments to your sculpt or to your mold. If it kicks all jagged up on here, then what can happen is that that'll trap air. I don't want to trap air. I want a nice smooth plaster. But look how thick it is now. Remember, this is a lot more like a little stiffer than a flan, but it's definitely a yogurt product now as opposed to heavy cream. And now I'm putting my hand down on the base, and I'm making a space between my hand and the sculpture, and I'm letting the plaster flow out of the bottom of my hand onto the sculpture.
Alan, during
Yes,
this step right here, how important is it to you for it to be like ultra smooth and really even coated? I guess is a good way of putting it.
I think it's kind of always important. I don't want to have a little bit of plaster. Know what your high spots are. I'm never going to have as much on the tip of the nose as I have at the base of the head. Gravity is going to do all the work for the base of that head for me, and I have to do all the work for the tip of the nose. The tips of the ears really stick out. So there's going to be a lot of plaster near them, but not quite covering them. So now it's a solid if you look at it, but I can still remind that it's liquid. So I can put this on and give it a shimmy, and now it flows. There is the difference between a good mold maker and a bad mold maker is just how many molds they've made most of the time. It's material knowledge. I know what I can get my plaster to do. If you don't know what you can get your plaster to do, it's going to lie to you and you're going to make mistakes. This plaster is a dick. If you know your material and you know how to coax it, then you can get quite a bit done.
That should be on a shirt.
Plaster is a dick. It is. Plaster will lie to you. Plaster will delaminate. You also want to make sure you have room to move around your sculpture. If this were my first mold, I would definitely put this on a Lazy Susan so that I could spin around all sides of it. But I've done enough where I'm comfortable and I know how much I'm going to have, you know, on any given area. And right now, even little depressions, I'm smoothing them out because I don't want that to be a catch for later where air can come in and just stay. It's not invited to this party. This is a plaster up against clay party. They are really good friends. I want them to be very close. There's like the chaperone that tries to stop clay and plaster from dancing close and making beautiful magic. So don't let air in. Seek out where he will hide and destroy him.
That's a good idea. Dr. Dark.
You almost called him Dr. Dork.
It's because his last name is Ord. Pardon me. Should you work sides to top or let gravity work and go top to sides?
I work sides up because if I work top and then let it flow over that way, it's going to have an underhang. In an underhang could be air. If I go up against the bottom and drag it up, I'm not going to have the same opportunity for air. That's pretty solid. But I know if I shake it, see it's still flowing. It's not crumbling, it's flowing. I'm just using this to patch in that thin area there. And mentally I'm making a note, I'm a little thin on the chin. I'm going all around this guy. And I am smoothing out the plaster that I have on so that my next batch will not create air bubbles. I already have a good 1/4 inch over most of my piece. So, you know, I'm not going to say this mold is done by any means because I'm a very firm believer, but this mold is covered. If I were in real hard times, see now what's coming off of my glove is sticking to it and making it, this is all crunchy. That's a bit of a danger, so I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to rub that in so it doesn't cause a problem. You want smoothness at almost every step. But this is still, even though it looks solid, it feels a lot more solid, it's still liquid. So if I push on this too hard, then it's going to adjust the sculpt inside. I'm gentle as I do this. All right, now I talked about how I wanted to make sure it's smooth, it's smooth, it's smooth. Well, now I'm going to take this tool, I'm going to put some ridges in it, which makes it not smooth, but that's going to give me grip for the next layer of plaster.
Oh, gotcha.
Those little ridges, no problem. I'll be able to, the plaster will be plenty liquid enough to go into those little ridges.
Now, if you didn't do that, what would happen?
It would probably stick just fine. You'd probably be fine. But I just like to do that.
Yeah.
Grip is better than no grip.
Now, will you be adding burlap to the mold?
No, I normally don't. That's a thing I normally skip. It does add some strength. It is helpful. But I'm not going to drop the mold on the ground. If you drop the mold on the ground, the mold is screwed anyway. So it's not going to, it doesn't help much. Also, if you drop a teacup, on the ground and it breaks apart, you can pick it up and glue it back together. But now imagine inside of that teacup is hair. Then you have to make sure you trim hair off, get the hair out of the way before you can glue it back together. A clean break on a mold without burlap is easier to repair than a break on a mold without burlap. So there you go. But many people do it, and that's the right way to do it. Often I teach that, but not this time. But I'm making a really thick mold. There's not going to be any bit of this mold that's thinner than 2 inches. It's going to be a thick mold. It'll be a tank of a mold.
Yeah, meaning move your foot if you drop it.
Yeah, exactly. For that one little mask, it's going to be a 40-pound mold.
Oh, wow.
All right, I'm going to grab a scraper real quick so I can scrape out over here this bucket.
Now, are you going to reuse the water from that bucket to mix another?
No, that water is cold. I
Ah,
have to go to warm water.
gotcha.
This time of year, it's hard to keep water warm in the shop, so I'm just going to put another 2 fingers or so of water into it. Which means that I'm going to have to step away. But Al already said when I step away, he's going to tell a story to everybody.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, with my horrible internet connection.
That's right. It'll be Al's Skippy story.
Exactly.
Yeah, Al's short for Al Qaeda. He lives in a cave, so he has bad internet.
Unfortunately, they probably have better internet than I do. I mean, that's sad, but it's true.
They post videos all the time. So they probably do. All right. This bucket is what I call clean enough for round 2 of plaster. I'm going to go get my warm water. I'll be right back, guys.
Okay. Is this motivating you, Al, to start making a mask again?
No, I was actually in the shop last night pouring latex. We don't do a lot of mask work, but I mean we are constantly molding. You know what I mean? So this is. I mean, I don't want to say it's nothing new because you always learn something dealing with Alan, but I'm fairly used to seeing most of these steps. You know. We do use a little different materials though. I mean, we tend to kind of use stuff local, you know. So, that's a little different.
Given what Alan's done so far, is there anything that you've seen him do that you haven't tried yet?
Well, I've never used the product there, the Hydrocal or what. I mean, we pretty much. I mean, I don't mind saying it. We pretty much use on our plaster molds. We use mainly silicone molds, but when we do pull a plaster mold, it's usually just construction plaster. And I mean, I don't know how that compares to what he's using, but that's just what we've always done. Cause we don't really do a whole lot. Most of the time, our stuff's silicone, cause we're using we're running our foam in it, and the only time we run plaster is when we're doing something out of latex. Because latex and silicone don't play good together at all.
That's good to know.
There's a question for interview. All right, gang. I'm back. I have my water in my bowl here. And now it's add plaster, add plaster, add plaster.
And while you're doing that, Alan, Michael Lacey wants to know, he says, not related to this mold, but I have made a prop out of spray foam with latex detail on the top part of it. I want to cast it, but I'm stumped on how to cast it without it sticking to the foam. I know original sculpt will be destroyed, but I want but want the cast to be okay.
It'll be fine. What you will do is you'll make a mold, make your plaster mold. The foam will stick to it a bit. Use acetone to melt out the foam. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, because acetone will just eat that foam right up, and that is very helpful if you want to clean foam out of a mold.
Well, Pennywise753 has a question. Pennywise, do you want to ask?
Hello?
He doesn't have a mic, Christy. He's going to have to type it in, and we'll have to ask it for him.
I'm sorry. I thought he would already. Because I'll have a mic for the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad.
What's your question?
Oh, not yet. Okay. Oh. Oh, it's John Dean. Okay. John, ask!
Well, hey, while we're waiting for that, Alan, how does that material you're using there? How's it compare to like just regular construction grade, plaster like on the shelf at Lowe's or Home Depot?
Okay, plaster of Paris sucks for this. You can use plaster of Paris for like a mother mold or something. It doesn't have the strength. Now, if you use wall plaster, it can have the strength. If you absolutely have to use something from Home Depot, then buy plaster of Paris and mortar mix and mix them 50-50. If you have to buy from Home Depot, it's going to have different size grits in it, so its detail capture will be a little bit different. If you think of Ultracal or Hydrocal plaster as pink foam, think of Home Depot plaster as styrofoam with all those little beads. A lot more room for voids, a lot more room for one of those beads to not quite get close to the other and miss a bit of detail. But for a mother mold or a jacket mold, where you're just trying to make something a little more solid, it's fine.
So in the case of what Michael Lacey wants to do, he could use that for the mother mold. Would that be correct or no?
He could use what for the mother mold?
He could use, if all he has access to is the stuff from Home Depot for his latex mold that he wants to do, he could use that, right, or no?
He can.
Okay.
I would prefer him to use a good plaster, not because I want the plaster companies to dominate the market or anything. It's just that it's a better quality product. It's going to yield better results. Why plaster of Paris sucks is it's inconsistent. There's no grade to it. It might set up in 15 minutes. It might take 45. It might have a Shore 60 hardness. It might have a Shore 90 hardness. It's not consistent. And if I can't get it to be consistent...
And, oh, this is interesting. Michael Lassiter says, he heard you say that you use about 2 drums of latex in a year. How many bags of plaster do you go through?
Oh, maybe 20.
Oh, wow.
About 2,000 pounds of plaster, probably.
Now, is that at home or at work or both?
At home, I'll go through about 10 or 15 bags of plaster. And at work, we buy a pallet of plaster about every year.
Oh, wow.
Now, sometimes it works out where I can just buy some from work, because I've got it at dark hour. I can just throw it in the van and head home. But other times, I go out and buy my own. Their stuff is their stuff. My stuff is my stuff.
Yeah. Now, I notice you're making that flat.
I want it to be flat because I want to be able to tip this over and set it down on the table like a bowl. And now it's just this is where my experience is paying off, because I am moving the plaster around. Even though it's hard, I'm using little tricks like cutting some slots in it, maybe a little bit of extra water, so I can smooth it out and get it to do what I want it to do. And I can be a little more forceful because there's rock under here, because that first layer is all the way solid now. So I'm not going to mess up what's underneath by being a little more forceful with the top. And I'm just scraping it off and making it nice, level, and flat. And now, while it's still soft, I'm running my hands over it, because all these little edges and ridges, once it's stone, those can cut you.
Ooh.
So I'm working to make it as smooth as I can, just by hand. Sometimes I'll take burlap and I'll rub burlap on it to get it nice and buffed out and shiny. But I managed to knock out this mold in 2 batches of plaster. I'm very confident that I have enough plaster on this sucker. Remember how high the sculpt was, and now the mold's all the way up here?
Yeah.
So I have a good 2 inches between this and the tip of the nose. The tip of my ears are at least 3/4 of an inch in. So I'm happy. And right
Facebook
now,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Facebook question, Alan. Could you use a cheese grater to cut down the plaster and shape it at this step?
Use a rasp. There's actually use a wood rasp or a big toothy file. That'll work a lot better to shave this plaster down. And often this edge here is always going to be a little bit sharp. I'll rasp that down quite a bit. I don't think I have my rasp here today. I think it's at work, so I won't do it today. But right now,
Oh, wow.
I just broke that seal. And now I'm going to take my mold to the edge of the table, and I'm going to work on that corner. Just with my hand, just so it's not killer sharp when I have to use this mold. Because, again, this is going to weigh 40 pounds. A little bit of a blade edge isn't a big deal until there's 40 pounds of weight on it. Then it's going to cut. I can saw a person in half with a 2x4 if I use enough force.
True.
Not that I've tried.
Or are you using one of the scrapers to make it
Yeah,
smooth?
this is actually just a metal, it's called a kidney. It's a metal kidney, serrated. But I'm using the flat edge, put a flat lip on the mold.
Is there a particular rasp you would recommend?
Shure, S-H-U-R-E, Shure rasp.
Ah.
It's got a yellow handle. You can get them on Amazon.
Oh.
You can get them on Home Depot too.
In a second, can you show that tool to the camera, Alan?
Kidney?
Metal kidney, real thin. Use it for sculpting. I'll use it in place of a rake tool pretty often. Remember how I raked all the lines in the sculpt? If it's a big, broad area, I can use this. What time is it?
It is, your time is 8:24.
That's my mold. It's going to sit like a bowl on the table. I'll clean all this clay out, and I can fill it with latex. But let me try and let's go ahead and clean some clay out of it.
Now, Jason Nichols says, how about using a wet scouring pad to sand and smooth the plaster?
Sure, that'll work. You have tons of options.
And then Diablo asks, does it have to be that thick, and how many pores can you get out of the one mold?
The thicker your mold is, the less likely it is to break. I like at least this much plaster, 1.5 inches, around every point of the mold. This mold will get me 25 to 30 pools with very little loss of detail. Now, a little bit of plaster has seeped under the edge of the sculpt, and that was like right here. And you can just push that down with your finger, and that'll break off. I know it's all the way up against the sculpt in the back, so it's not an important part of the mold.
Now, Dr. Dark asks, do you spray this with a plastic sealer to protect it?
No. If I spray it with a sealer, it won't suck moisture out of latex anymore because it's been sealed.
Gotcha.
I want to make sure that none of that happens. I'm going to grab a screwdriver real quick so I can pry this head form out. I might not need it. This is not a very thick resin head form. So you can see it's a little bit flexible.
Yeah, looks like it's starting to come.
Well, in some spots. Again, plaster is a dick. I'm grabbing a screwdriver. I'll be right back. I want to be very careful. All right, not super careful. I would be pretty careful with the edge of this mold because this is the edge of my mask. But I trim most of that off, so I don't have to be super careful with it. But I want to be aware. I don't want to stab this down into it. I could break a piece of plaster way down in there. So I want to just work the edge a bit and try to pry up to get... You have a big vacuum. That clay has caused such a huge vacuum up against this resin bust. And that's really what's holding it in, is just that pressure. I'm going to go piece by piece, kind of like I'm prying open a paint can. And this is pretty green. If this is your first mold, don't try and pull the clay out right now. Go drink a beer. You did a good job molding this. You clean it out in 2 hours. Clean it out tomorrow. Don't do it today. You don't have to. I know the material well. And of course, whenever someone says something like that, that's when they break shit. You know? So, but if you're prying too much and you put too much stress on one point and you didn't get it thick enough, it could break off.
Oh.
But it didn't.
Ooh.
So there's my face form.
Now, was there a concern about breaking the face form?
There can be. My very good friend Bart Butler, every time he gets a head form, he rips the head off of it when he's demolding, because you have to pull on the head. You do a two-piece mask mold, there's a lot of pressure on that neck, and the necks just aren't as strong. So he breaks his head form. It still works. You can skewer it back together, but it just happens. I've broken a lot too. Now, because I had that sealer on, and right now the clay the plaster is warm. It's making a steam layer in between the clay and the sculpt. So I can pull this off with very little cleaning.
Nice. And that's just going to keep getting hot to a point, and then it's going to finally start cooling off, right?
Yes. But I wanted to get this cleaned up to enough of a point where I could show you guys me pulling the teeth out. And I'm almost there. Put you back on the tripod. Give me a little bit of time here. It's best to use wooden tools to clean your mold because the wooden tools are not stronger than the plaster. A metal tool is stronger than the plaster. All these fine ridges, a metal tool would break right off. This wooden tool won't once it's fully cured. Right now it's still green. It will. It'll break them clean off. So I'm just being very careful.
It looks like your tool of choice is the tongue depressor.
It's a tongue depressor, absolutely. Hard to beat a tongue depressor for almost any mask making need. It's a sculpting tool. It's a cleaning tool. It's awesome.
And it's cheap enough.
Yeah. I think I get a box of 1,000 for $12. And I'm just picking away here. Now, right now, this plaster's still soft, so I'm careful. It's not like mushy soft; it's a rock, but it's still soft. So I have to be careful not to break my edges and chip things.
How easy is it going to be to get the ears out?
I'll probably wait a little bit to get the ears out, but it won't be that hard. I'll pick them out with a wire. Bend a little piece of wire to the shape that I need. Pick it a little bit, pick a little bit, bend it a little bit, pick a little bit. Water-based clay, I can take this with a power washer and just power wash out the mold. The clay goes away, the plaster doesn't. Don't use a giant gas-powered power washer. It might be able to go through the plaster.
Ooh.
But a 1200, 1400 PSI power washer, no problem. No problem, almost no risk. So what was a hole, what was a negative, is now a positive. These are the eyes. These are ridged up. So those are the eyes. They're going to be deep holes in the mask. The the deep ridge, the nasolabial fold right here, that is a ridge now. Everything is negative. It's opposite of what it was.
Now, John has a really good question. He says, my latex is getting old. I think it started to get really thick. Can I add ammonia or something to the latex to thin it out again?
Yep, add ammonia. You'll be fine.
And Chris Steffens asks if you can reuse the clay.
You can, but see that? That's plaster. So you can. I can just set this in water. That's actually a pretty good detail piece of the brow right there. But I can set this in water, let it soak up, but it's always going to have these fine little pieces of plaster in it. I normally throw it away. Water-based clay is very cheap. If I were using oil-based clay, I would definitely reuse it. Plaster chips be damned. But this is water-based clay. It's cheap. I don't reuse it. I throw it away. My garbage men hate me, and I give them $10 every Christmas because my garbage bags are heavy with clay a lot.
And as you said before, it's dirt. It's just going right back into the earth.
That's right. Yeah. I'm putting dirt into a landfill, not even garbage.
Now, Diablo asks, maybe this was a question for you from the last hangout, but when making a mask, what is the fine line to copying somebody else's design as far as getting ideas from it? Or is this something you should not do?
Oh, boy. He asks hard questions. Honestly, I try not to copy. It happens sometimes. Sometimes you do homages to other people's stuff. If I want a Pennywise mask, and there is a good Pennywise mask on the market that has the license to use it, I will buy that mask as opposed to make one. You guys can see how much work goes into making one mask. This is not cost effective if you only need one. If you need 5 or if you need 3, go ahead and make it. It'll save you money. But if you only need 1, buy it. So now on copying someone else's work.
But I would see it as more of a concern if you're going to turn around and sell it. If it's for your own personal use, I mean, I guess I would see that as a fine line right there.
Now, there's commercial rights, which you're exactly right, if you're going to turn around and sell it. But if the person only intended to use it for themselves, then you're making a product for the exact same reason they made a product.
And Dr. Dark asks, can you carve the plaster for a signature?
I could have just spelled one into the clay. A lot of people do that. They might get a little stamp or something and just stamp the clay. Happens a lot. I don't feel a big need to sign my work.
They're saying that the video froze.
My video froze?
Yeah, let me take a look at something here. Oh, just refresh. It should continue forward.
For me or for them?
For them. Let me just let them know.
Okay. All right, I am now a little bit concerned with my mold. Because if you look in here, I haven't right here. That's where a pumpkin tooth was, and it's missing. I think it just pulled clean out when I pulled out the chin. But I want to find them because I want to know what happened to it. It certainly didn't fall out before I molded it, but very interesting. It disappeared. Mine froze?
The video's frozen. I wonder if it's a setting.
I haven't touched anything.
I wonder if it's set to an hour.
Um,
I'm just checking the...
Mine still says it's broadcasting. It still says it's live. And you guys can see I've got live up here.
I'm just checking really quick.
I just turned my camera off for a second.
Okay.
Now I've turned it back on.
I wonder if there is a different video now. If there is, I'll post it in the comments.
How would it make a different video?
I'm not sure. No, it looks like... I see where you're knocking on the... and then it stops.
What am I knocking on?
You're knocking on the form, and then that's where it stops.
Weird.
It's working fine on mine. Okay.
Okay, so it's only stopped for some people.
Yeah, I can see.
Are you
Well-
watching through YouTube? Because it looks like through YouTube it stopped.
I will be right back. I'm going to check on my wife's computer real quick because she's, a different internet connection. Be right back.
Okay.
Hey, honey, did my video freeze?
Can,
I guess not if we're having the rain sometimes calls the bandwidth drop. Hey guys, see if it picked up.
okay. Let me refresh.
Just see if it picked up and see if it's current now.
Looks like it stopped at you. Let me see if it's going to do it. Yep, it stops where you knock on it. Let me go to this here really quick. No, it looks like it's stuck on that. Yeah, it's stuck on that. Let me see.
Okay, I'm doing everything that I can right now. I just killed every other window on my computer.
Okay.
I'm trying to use as little bandwidth as possible. I think with the storms we've had in the area, I just don't have as much bandwidth as normal.
I think if it only went an hour.
I think it's something with the upload, Alan, because on mine, I've seen you get as far as cleaning the clay out, so it's only like maybe 8 minutes behind where we are currently.
Should I just start another one and I'll post the link again?
Might be a good idea because I noticed it on mine. It just stops after you knock on the mold.
Okay, well let me kill this. I'll kill this, and Christy, I'll invite you again, then you invite the others, okay?
Okay, thank you.